In the heart of an ancient land, where the sun kissed the earth with golden warmth and the air hummed with the whispers of ancestors, lay the village of Goza. For 5 long years, Goza had known the relentless grip of famine. The once fertile lands lay parched and cracked, the rivers dwindled to mournful trickles, and the laughter of children was a forgotten melody. Hope, a fragile ember, flickered precariously in the hearts of its people, threatening to be extinguished by the ever-present shadow of despair. Each sunrise brought with it the same arduous struggle for survival, and the nights were often filled with the hollow pangs of hunger. The elders spoke of times of plenty, of rivers brimming with fish and fields bursting with grain, but these tales now seemed like distant dreams, almost impossible to imagine in their current plight. Among them was a young farmer named Django. His spirit, though tested by hardship and the relentless demands of a starving land, remained as resilient as the ancient baobab trees that dotted the landscape. His hut, small and humble, fashioned from mud and thatch, was a testament to his poverty, yet within its modest walls, kindness, compassion, and an unyielding sense of responsibility resided. Django toiled from dawn till dusk, his lean muscles straining, coaxing what little life he could from the stubborn, unyielding earth. His brow was perpetually furrowed with worry, not just for his own survival, but for his ailing mother, whose strength waned with each passing day, and for the hungry, wide-eyed children of Goza, whose innocent faces bore the marks of deprivation. He often shared his meager findings with others, even when his own stomach rumbled with emptiness, believing that a shared burden was a lighter one. One sweltering evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in breathtaking hues of orange, purple, and crimson, Django ventured into the whispering forest on the outskirts of the village. He sought wild roots, berries, or perhaps a small animal, anything to stave off the gnawing hunger that had become a constant companion. The forest, usually a place of comfort and familiar sounds, felt different that night. A deep, almost unnatural silence had fallen, broken only by the rustling of leaves that seemed to carry an ancient, whispered secret. The air grew heavy with an unspoken anticipation, and the shadows seemed to lengthen and deepen with an almost sentient quality. As darkness enveloped the trees, swallowing the last vestiges of twilight, Django, his eyes straining through the gloom, stumbled upon a small clearing. To his astonishment, the clearing was bathed in an ethereal moonlight, impossibly bright and pure. There, hunched over a crackling, strangely warm fire that seemed to burn without smoke, sat an old woman. Her face was a profound tapestry of wrinkles, each line a story etched by time, a chronicle of countless seasons and experiences. Her eyes, though clouded with the milky film of extreme age, held a wisdom that seemed to span centuries, observing the world with a knowing, almost piercing gaze. Django, though surprised and a little awed by her sudden appearance in such a secluded spot, approached with the deference and respect ingrained in his culture. "Good evening, Mama," he said, his voice soft and respectful, carrying a genuine concern. "May I be of assistance to you?" The old woman looked up, her head slowly lifting, and a faint, knowing smile, like a sunrise over a calm lake, graced her lips. "Young one," she croaked, her voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind, a sound both ancient and gentle, "you have a good heart. It shines brighter than the fire itself. Sit, share my warmth, and rest your weary bones." Django, though still wary, felt an inexplicable sense of calm in her presence. Weary but grateful for the invitation, he joined her by the fire, sinking onto the cool earth. They spoke little, but a comfortable, almost sacred silence settled between them, punctuated only by the soft crackle of the fire and the distant calls of night creatures. The old woman shared her meager meal of roasted roots, their earthy scent filling the night air, and Django, in turn, offered the few, precious berries he had managed to gather. In that moment, by that mystical fire, the boundaries of their worlds seemed to blur, and a connection, deeper than words, was forged. As the moon climbed higher, casting long, dancing shadows that stretched and swayed like ancient spirits, the old woman's gaze intensified. Her eyes, though still ancient, seemed to gleam with an inner light. She reached into a woven satchel beside her, a satchel that appeared to be made of shadows and moonlight, and produced a calabash. It was not an ordinary calabash. Its surface gleamed with an inner, pulsating light, adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to shift and swirl, telling unspoken stories in the firelight. Its craftsmanship was unlike anything Django had ever seen, each line a testament to an artistry beyond human understanding. "This, young Django," she said, her voice now imbued with a strange, resonant power that seemed to vibrate through the very air, "is for you. It is a gift, earned not by gold, but by the purity of your spirit." Django, awestruck and deeply moved, took the calabash. Its smooth, cool surface felt alive beneath his fingertips, humming with a gentle energy. "Mama, I cannot accept such a magnificent gift," he stammered, his voice filled with humility and disbelief. "I have nothing to offer you in return, no wealth, no possessions worthy of such an item." The old woman chuckled, a sound like dry river stones tumbling gently. "Your good heart, your unwavering kindness, your selfless spirit, Django, is payment enough. More than any gold or jewel could ever be. This calabash is magical. It holds immense power. It will grant you anything you wish for." Django's eyes widened, reflecting the dancing firelight, his breath catching in his throat. "Magic," he breathed, the word a reverent whisper on his lips. "Yes," she affirmed, her gaze unwavering. "But heed my words, Django, and listen with your soul, not just your ears. This gift is not for your soul enrichment. It is to be a help for you and for the struggling village of Goza, which has known too much sorrow, too much hunger, too much despair." She then spoke of the village's suffering, of the parched lands and the aching hunger, of the quiet desperation in the eyes of its people, as if she had witnessed it all herself, her words painting a vivid, painful picture. "Use it wisely, Django. With wisdom, with compassion, and with an open heart. For the good of all. For the upliftment of your community." With those profound words, she slowly stood, her movements surprisingly agile and graceful for her apparent age, rising like a wisp of mist. She offered Django one last, knowing look, a look filled with both hope and a touch of melancholy, and then, as if she were made of moonlight itself, she vanished into the deep shadows of the forest, leaving Django alone with the wondrous, pulsating calabash and a heart pounding with a mixture of disbelief, overwhelming gratitude, and a soaring, fragile hope. Django returned to his humble hut, the magical calabash clutched tightly in his hands, its inner glow illuminating his path. He could not sleep, his mind racing with the immense possibilities and the daunting responsibility that now rested upon his shoulders. The weight of his village's suffering, combined with the power of the calabash, made his thoughts swirl. The next morning, he rose before the sun, his spirit alight with a newfound purpose, invigorated by a hope he hadn't felt in years. He thought not of personal gain, not of enriching himself, but of the suffering faces of his villagers, the hollow eyes of the children, the weary expressions of the elders. He lifted the calabash, its surface shimmering faintly in the tender dawn light, feeling its gentle hum against his skin. "I wish," he whispered, his voice trembling with a profound emotion that mingled hope and a deep sense of compassion, "for the well in the village square to flow with fresh, clear, life-giving water once more. Let it never run dry again." Immediately, a gentle, powerful hum emanated from the calabash, vibrating through Django's very bones. A soft, iridescent light pulsed from within its carved surface, growing brighter and brighter. Django, his heart pounding with anticipation and a hopeful prayer, rushed to the village square. And there it was, the ancient well, a symbol of their past vitality, which had been dry and barren for so long, now gurgled and overflowed with an abundance of crystal-clear water, sparkling in the nascent morning sun. The water tasted sweet and pure, a miracle in itself. A joyous, incredulous cry erupted from the villagers who had already begun to gather, drawn by the strange light and the sudden sounds. Their faces, once etched with despair, were now illuminated with wonder and disbelief, tears mingling with the splashes of fresh water. They rushed forward, cupping their hands, drinking deeply, their thirst quenched after so many agonizing days. Over the following days, Django, guided solely by his selfless heart and the old woman's solemn words, used the calabash with meticulous care and wisdom. He wished for the parched fields to be revitalized, and immediately, rich, dark soil replaced the cracked earth. He wished for seeds to sprout, and overnight, tender green shoots emerged, promising bountiful harvests. He wished to replenish the village granaries, and soon, they overflowed with sacks of nutrient-rich grain, enough to feed everyone for months. He even wished to mend the broken tools of the farmers, and their rusty hoes and worn plows were restored to their former strength. The famine's cruel grip began to loosen its hold, slowly but surely, as if a great, ancient curse was being lifted. The hollow pangs of hunger gave way to the comforting warmth of full bellies, and laughter, a sound long forgotten, once again echoed through the streets of Goza, light and melodic. Django, true to the old woman's words, shared every blessing, every gift from the calabash, ensuring that no one in the village went hungry, that no one was left wanting. He became a beacon of hope, admired, respected, and deeply loved by all who lived in Goza. His humility only endeared him further to the people. However, not everyone rejoiced in Django's good fortune, or rather, in the village's renewed prosperity. In a grander, more opulent hut on the other side of Goza lived Dumble, a man whose heart was as barren and unyielding as the parched earth before the calabash's magic. Dumble possessed a shrewd and cunning mind for trade, but an even shrewder and more insidious one for envy and insatiable greed. He watched Django's rising popularity and the village's revitalization with a bitter taste in his mouth, a venomous resentment swirling within him. He was utterly unable to comprehend such selfless acts, viewing them as foolish and wasteful. He saw the calabash not as a tool for communal good, but as a shortcut to immense personal wealth, unchecked power, and absolute control. Dumble began to spy on Django, observing his every move with a calculating, predatory gaze, his eyes gleaming with avarice and dark desire. He learned Django's habits, when he slept, when he was most vulnerable. One moonless night, when the village slept soundly, lulled into a deep slumber by full bellies and newfound peace, Dumble crept stealthily, like a predator, towards Django's humble hut. His heart thumped like a frantic war drum against his ribs, a mixture of fear and adrenaline fueling his illicit mission. He slipped inside, his movements swift and silent, and there, on a small wooden stool, lay the magical calabash, glowing softly, almost invitingly, in the gloom. With trembling, eager hands, he snatched it, his mind already spinning with grand schemes of unimaginable riches and unprecedented power. He returned to his own opulent hut, his breath coming in ragged, desperate gasps. He clutched the calabash tightly, his eyes darting around as if expecting to be caught, his conscience, a tiny flicker, battling with his overwhelming desire. He lifted the calabash, his voice raspy with suppressed excitement. "I wish," he hissed, his voice thick with unbridled desire, "for gold. Piles and piles of gleaming gold, enough to bury me in its splendor." Immediately, the calabash pulsed with a vibrant, blinding light, and the floor of Dumble's hut was suddenly covered in a shimmering, overflowing carpet of gold coins, jewels, and precious artifacts. He laughed maniacally, a harsh, grating sound, rolling in his newfound wealth, his greedy fingers raking through the precious metals, delighting in their cold, hard weight. He wished for more, and still more, until his hut overflowed with treasures, spilling out into his courtyard, creating a garish display of opulence. With his immense and rapidly acquired wealth, Dumble's true, corrupted nature revealed itself in its darkest form. He grew arrogant and cruel, his compassion replaced by disdain. He treated the villagers with contempt, demanding tribute for the very water and food that Django had brought forth through the calabash. He built an even grander mansion, its walls adorned with precious stones and exotic carvings, its vast gardens filled with rare, beautiful plants that strangely withered and died under his cold, unappreciative gaze, as if refusing to flourish in his presence. He hired fierce, imposing guards, men with stern faces and heavy clubs, who enforced his every arbitrary whim, striking fear into the hearts of the common folk. The laughter that had returned to Goza began to fade once more, replaced by a quiet resentment, a simmering anger, and a pervasive sense of hopelessness. Django, heartbroken by Dumble's swift transformation and the chilling return of a subtle fear in the village, tried repeatedly to reason with him, to appeal to any shred of humanity that might remain. He reminded Dumble of the old woman's solemn words, of the true purpose of the gift. But Dumble merely sneered, his eyes hard and unfeeling, devoid of any warmth or understanding. "The calabash is mine now, fool," he retorted, his voice dripping with scorn. "And I shall use it as I please. My will is law here." Days turned into weeks, and Dumble's greed knew no bounds. He wished for rare silks from distant lands, for fine wines, for exotic delicacies, for countless servants to cater to his every capricious need, growing ever more indulgent and detached from the suffering of others. The villagers, once full of hope, now walked with bowed heads, their hearts heavy with the bitter knowledge that the magic meant for their salvation, meant for the good of all, had fallen into the hands of a tyrant, a man consumed by his own destructive desires. The golden age of Gozer, so recently begun, seemed poised to crumble. One scorching afternoon, as the sun beat down mercilessly, turning the air into a shimmering haze, Dumble, bloated with self-importance and excessive indulgence, decided to make another extravagant wish. He held the calabash aloft, his greedy eyes already picturing mountains of glittering jewels, untold power, and even more enslaved servants. But as he prepared to utter his desire, his hand, slick with sweat from his excessive feasting and his inner turmoil, trembled violently. The magical calabash, as if recoiling in disgust and indignation from his corrupt touch, from the weight of his malevolent intent, slipped from his grasp. It fell to the polished, imported stone floor of his grand, ostentatious hall with a sickening, resounding crack that seemed to echo through the very foundations of the earth. A profound, almost unnatural hush fell over the entire village, a silence so deep it felt as if time itself had paused. Then, as if the heavens themselves were angered by the sacrilege, a deafening thunderclap ripped through the sky, immediately followed by a blinding flash of lightning that, impossibly, seemed to slice across the entire village, illuminating every corner in a stark, fleeting brilliance. The ground beneath their feet trembled violently, a tremor that radiated from Dumble's mansion, shaking huts and unsettling the very earth. From the broken pieces of the calabash, now shattered and inert, a fearsome, angry roar erupted, a sound that shook the very foundations of Gozer. It was a primal, ancient sound, full of indignation, fury, and a cosmic displeasure that transcended human understanding. It was the sound of violated magic, of misused power, of justice awakened. Villagers, terrified and awestruck, cautiously emerged from their huts, their eyes drawn, as if by an invisible force, to Dumble's mansion, which now seemed to glow with an ominous, flickering light, pulsating with an unseen energy. They cautiously approached, their hearts pounding in unison, a mixture of fear and a strange, nascent hope propelling them forward. As they neared the grand entrance, they saw her, standing amidst the shattered pieces of the calabash, bathed in an otherworldly, pulsating glow that seemed to emanate from her very being, was the old woman from the forest. But she was no longer the frail, stooped figure Django had met by the fire. Slowly, majestically, with a grace that was both terrifying and beautiful, she transformed. Her wrinkles smoothed away, vanishing like mist in the sun. Her hair flowed like a dark, shimmering river, cascading over her shoulders. Her eyes, once clouded with age, now blazed with the fierce, unwavering light of 1,000 stars, reflecting the very essence of creation and destruction. Her humble, worn garments shimmered and transformed into robes of iridescent silk, woven with threads of starlight and adorned with intricate symbols of creation, destruction, life, and justice. She was no mere old woman. She was a goddess, ancient and powerful, her presence radiating an aura of divine authority, a palpable force that commanded reverence. The villagers gasped, falling to their knees in awe and terror, their faces pressed to the earth in humble submission. Dumble, cowering in a corner of his once grand hall, now reduced to a whimpering mess, stared at her with wide, terrified eyes, his face pale with dread, his arrogance utterly shattered. The goddess's voice, now resonant and clear as a mountain spring, imbued with the power of the heavens, echoed through the stunned, reverent silence. It vibrated through the very air, reaching into the hearts of all who heard it. Dumble, she boomed, her voice laced with righteous anger, you have misused a sacred gift. You have twisted its pure purpose for selfish, corrupt gain, and in doing so, you have brought suffering and despair back to these good, innocent people. Your greed has poisoned their lives, and your heart has become a vessel for darkness. She raised a hand, exquisitely formed yet radiating immense power, and a wave of pure, divine energy, shimmering with blue and silver light, emanated from her. For your boundless greed, for your relentless cruelty, for the suffering you have so callously inflicted upon these souls, I curse you with illness and wounds that will never heal, that will torment your body and spirit for the rest of your miserable days. Let them be a constant, agonizing reminder of your wicked heart and your transgressions. A piercing, guttural shriek of agony escaped Dumble's lips as his body began to contort and twist. His once smooth skin erupted in painful, weeping sores, his strong limbs twisted into grotesque shapes, and a debilitating weakness, profound and inescapable, seized him, pinning him to the ground in agonizing torment. He thrashed and writhed, but the curse held him fast, his suffering a stark testament to his misdeeds. Then, the goddess turned her luminous gaze to Django, who still stood among the kneeling villagers, his heart a tumultuous mixture of fear, profound relief, and an overwhelming sense of humility. "Django," she said, her voice softening, losing its fierce edge, now imbued with a warm, comforting light, "you, whose heart remained pure and unwavering, who used my sacred gift for the good of all, for the upliftment of your community, for the nurturing of life, I bless you. Your fields will forever yield abundant harvests, richer than any Gozer has ever known. Your granaries will never be empty, but will overflow with sustenance and wealth, not for selfish indulgence or personal power, but for the continued prosperity, well-being, and joy of Gozer, shall be yours and your descendants forever." As she spoke, a soft, golden light, gentle and warm, enveloped Django, washing over him like a comforting balm. He felt a profound sense of peace, gratitude, and an enduring connection to the divine wash through his entire being. He truly understood the magnitude of his purpose. With a final, majestic nod, a gesture of profound grace and power, the goddess shimmered. Then, like a wisp of smoke, like a dream fading with the dawn, she disappeared, dissolving into the very air, leaving behind a silence that was thick with reverence, awe, and a newly restored hope. Immediately, as if her departure was the signal, for the first time in 5 long, agonizing years, the sky darkened once more, but this time not with ominous clouds, but with clouds heavy with promise. And a heavy, cleansing rain began to fall. It was not a gentle shower, but a torrential downpour, washing away the dust of famine, the grime of greed, and the lingering shadows of despair. The earth, parched and thirsty, drank deeply, eagerly, and the air filled with the sweet, intoxicating scent of life renewed, of growth, of rebirth. The villagers, soaked to the bone but jubilant, their hearts overflowing with relief and joy, raised their voices in a spontaneous chorus of praise and thanks, their shouts mingling with the joyous drumming of the rain. The rains continued for days, transforming the barren, cracked land into a vibrant, lush tapestry of green, bursting with new life. Django, now truly blessed, lived a life of quiet prosperity, always remembering the old woman's solemn words, always sharing his bounty with his beloved village of Gozer, ensuring its continued flourishing. Dumble, consumed by his agonizing curse, withered away in his grand, now desolate mansion, a cautionary tale whispered in the wind, a somber reminder of the destructive power of unchecked greed. And in Goza, the story of the magical calabash and the goddess who brought both justice and rejuvenation became a cherished legend, passed down from generation to generation, a timeless reminder that true wealth lies not in gold or power, but in the boundless kindness of a generous, selfless heart.